Good morning, I'm Raine Musñgi and welcome to Follow the Money. Join us as we explore the tools and insights you need to jumpstart your financial journey. With declining interest rates and persistent inflation, we need to find ways on how to safeguard our wealth and make informed financial decisions. Today, we're joined by Dr. Alvin Ang, the head of economics of the Ateneo de Manila University on leave, who will guide us through the complexities of managing personal finances in today's challenging economic climate. Dr. Ang, grateful you could join us live from the U.S.
Good morning. Thank you for the invitation.
So, Dr. Ang, with interest rates declining, yet inflation remains kind of elevated at 4.4% as of July, how do you think Filipinos might adjust their daily budgets to be able to manage rising costs in essential items like food and transportation?
Well, basically, the food part is a bit challenged right now because of the conditions where the global prices are just softening. And very low production output in the Philippines. So that is a challenge, but it doesn't mean that the consumers are not able to adjust. They have been able to adjust, and we are seeing inflation to softening in the next few months. And so coinciding with the lower interest rates, that gives an opportunity for the consumers to more or less calibrate as following the falling inflation and interest rates, their consumption of basic necessities like food, basically, and transport.
We're hearing stories that, if inflation is 4.4% on average throughout the country, in the lower income areas, this inflation is actually higher, or it could be up to 3 times higher. Is that something that you've heard or seen testimonials of? And how do we help control that kind of pricing?
Well, for lower income families, definitely that's a challenge because a bigger chunk of the basket of their expenditure is really about food. And so it's really necessary that food prices are managed at that level. We can't do price controls, but to the extent that the government has lowered the tariff on rice and importing expected shortfalls in production, particularly in livestock and vegetables, that helps cushion possible upswings of prices.
Great, Reco. Now, the average cost of tuition, for example, in private schools has also risen by 7% annually over the past 5 years. Are there strategies that parents might be able to consider for financing education, given the dual challenge of both high inflation and declining returns on savings and investments?
Well, for education purposes, it's really like it's difficult to bring it down to adjust it. So there are opportunities for families, for example, to uh, take advantage of online tutorial rather than paying for your own tutorial. And there are also opportunities in terms of uh, shifting unnecessary education expenses at the moment. It is a foregone conclusion that every year education, the tuition is going up, and the cost of education as well. So it is something that the government or families, with government can manage the increase. But the families have to really put a budget into their education expenses as similar to the cost of providing for their basic necessities. In terms of strategy, you already mentioned that the returns are going down, but not yet, no? So basically, the families who have invested a certain portion of their resources in the last 2, 3 years, they should have been able to get some sort of higher interest rates return from their investment. So by this time, they should be applying that to their education expenditure. But moving forward, um, it's really that the families really have to set aside religiously the amount they think is needed for education, and already for I mean, include in that the expected average increase of tuition every year, which we have data over the past few years.
Right. So still take advantage of those investment potentials. But so now we're going from food to education, and now another touch point, housing prices in the Philippines. They've increased by 5.4% year on year, despite lower interest rates. On the topic of rent, for example, or rent versus owning, in this current economic environment, is it still advisable for Filipinos to invest in purchasing housing? What are the risks and opportunities?
Well, first time housing user, I mean first time house buyers, they have to buy their own properties, but of course the rentals are also increasing. So it's a matter of evaluating the cost of rent every month and the cost of borrowing for a house. More or less, I would believe the difference for first-time house buyers, the difference would not be so much, but it would be the distance from the workplace or the school that would be the challenge. So, renting is really more for practical reasons, but it's really needed that people need to do that cost benefit analysis of renting versus oh, excuse me, owning the house. But for second, third investment of real estate, that's really on the high side at the moment. I would defer doing that. And wait until this interest rate environment softens. And that's if you want to invest in real estate, that would be when the interest rates have gone down, especially if you're not paying cash. So that's the challenge in that arena. But it's a must that if the working households can to invest in their own first time homes, and government has done a good job through Pag-ibig, and we should take advantage of that mechanism available to all of us through the Pag-ibig.
Certainly. Now, you mentioned investments earlier. I'm not sure if you've had an opportunity to look at the returns so far this year from the different asset classes, but the PSEI has shown volatility with a 3% drop in the quarter so far. How should Filipinos approach investing in assets like stocks or bonds when traditional savings obviously are yielding lower returns due to declining interest rates? People are resorting to just putting their money under the bed.
Well, the bonds have recently increased because of high interest rate, and should have been an opportunity for first-time investors in non-traditional savings or time deposit. They should have taken advantage of that. There have been a lot of retail kind of bonds that were released. Unfortunately, we are now entering the low interest rate environment, so the bonds will not give you that high returns, but still better than what time deposit will give you. On the other hand, stock market, you don't look at the broader barometer. Look at specific stocks, and there are stocks that have given good returns higher than the average of the market. So it's a matter of really understanding where are the movers, or where are these industries that are giving good returns.
Right. And of course, investments are moving towards retirement, but the average Filipino's retirement savings cover only 30% of what is needed for a comfortable retirement. And obviously, we can't rely or depend on our SSS or GSIS for further benefits long term. Are there key considerations for retirement planning in this kind of environment, especially for those nearing that retirement age, 60
The
or 65?
retirement planning basically is not for the middle, lower to middle income people at the moment because of the high cost of living. But basically, if you have reached a certain threshold, it's not easy to say that you will save 30% for your retirement with the current environment. So there are opportunities, and there are a lot of mechanisms available, but it really requires a religious understanding of long-term returns that you want to have, or long-term investments that you are willing to forego today, so that in the future you have that. So it's a big challenge even for those who are already middle class and high middle class. Most of the retirement options are really looking at the traditional real estate, or looking at fixed assets that are locked in for 5 to 10 years. And we have those instruments. We have the Pera, we have the Pag-ibig, they have the MP2, and many online banks actually are offering higher interest rates as long as you fix there's a fixed term kind of deposit. So these are not unknown to people. Basically, it's a question of their willingness to do and put their money in this.
Right, and those are something that they can be smarter about when it comes to money. And of course, no matter what income level you are, I'm hearing from you a sense of sacrifice as well. Let's hold that thought for a second. We're taking a quick break. Keep it here and follow the money on the Bilyonaryo News Channel. Welcome back. You're still watching Follow the Money. We're still here with Dr. Alvin Ang on managing finances in this interest rate and inflation environment. Dr. Ang, healthcare costs in the Philippines have also increased by about 6.2% annually, and it's outpacing general inflation. How can Filipinos ensure that they are adequately covered for health expenses, given the rising costs of healthcare and the potential impact of inflation?
Mm. Well, healthcare, primarily all of us, will need the PhilHealth basically to contribute and make sure that we are contributing this. And then we know that that's not going to be enough, and that's why we need to have our own HMO, depending on your choice, depending on your capability. You don't need to get a really expensive one, but get one that enables you to have like get your medical tests or regular checkups, and then pay a certain portion of unexpected hospitalization. So these are essentials for fighting against increasing health costs every year. And since the probability of getting sick, at least having a common cold or what, is much higher than taking chances of not having protection, then that's something that people should be putting in as part of their budget.
Right. Those emergency medical coverage is actually also available on platforms like Shopee and Lazada on a prepaid basis. It's really not that as expensive as people think. And meanwhile, talk about emergencies. The World Bank also found that only 20% of Filipino households have an emergency fund that can cover at least 3 months of expenses. Why do we have a peg like that? And with crises becoming more frequent, are there financial strategies that Filipinos could adopt to build a robust emergency fund?
Well, it's cultural, psychological. Filipinos don't like the word emergency, so nobody will invest for an emergency fund. If you just simply change the terminology, call it a uh, a protection fund, or call it in the sense of the positive, like a savings fund for some kind of a trip, or another kind of investment, so that it can be flexibly used if some emergency happens, and they can withdraw and defer that purpose for the meantime. I have seen that in many fora. People don't like to use the word emergency. They don't want to keep money for emergency, because then they are saving for it to happen, basically, right? So it's a psychological thing, I think. It's a behavioral. Changing the nomenclature will change the attitude.
Right. Let's just say it's a travel fund or like a vacation fund. Meanwhile, the NDR RMC also tells us that natural disasters have cost the Philippines an average of about 206 billion pesos annually. Now, of course, not everybody will be exposed to the environment, but in case of a crisis from climate change or whatnot, or for floods, especially now that it's raining hard, how can Filipinos financially prepare for natural disasters that may affect their assets and livelihoods?
Well, if those owning their home should be able to buy insurance for their homes, and those that have assets and properties should buy insurance. That's the best way to protect your assets. Those that don't have and don't own their properties, it's basically again similar to the concept of having some kind of a buffer or emergency fund. So, just continue saving for that travel, for that new motorcycle or new phones that you can always defer when it's needed.
Right. Finally, consumer confidence in the Philippines dropped 21.8% in the second quarter this year, indicating that people are more cautious when it comes to spending. So how should families prioritize spending and saving in an environment where there's a challenge in meeting both the short-term needs and long-term goals? Like, if, for example, we've been talking about how we should set aside money for emergencies and medical possibilities and other, unforeseen circumstances, like how much of the budget mix should this be costing?
Well, again, you cannot have like a common approach for that because it differs per family,
Sure.
so and per income, and also again it plays the behavioral aspect plays and the cultural aspect plays. So, consumer confidence, you see, this is really the measurement is seasonal. So in the second quarter, basically you're going towards summer, and so you're measuring basically less expenditures, and this was caused by high prices of the first quarter. So when you do the survey, and that will reflect the previous or the current conditions. So the price of rice, for example, was 20% higher in the last three quarters prior to the current one. So that could, if the general bulk of the respondents will show you the income level is much lower, then that will reflect that kind of consumer confidence because rice is the very important source of the consumer basket. But
Understood.
you will see once you do this for the third, fourth quarter, this will change significantly.
Well, we only have a minute left, but despite the challenges, of course, Filipinos remain hopeful that they will be able to achieve financial stability. In this challenging environment, is there a piece of advice you would impart to a Filipino to ensure they will be able to achieve that goal?
Basically, it's always prioritize what you need, spend that money for the things that you need, and then set aside whatever you can. No need to to spend to setting aside as much as 30%. If you can only set aside 5, that's it. No, don't over push yourself because that is the reason why people go into debt. They're trying to come up with some formula, adhere to certain formulas that's not achievable for all kinds of income levels. It depends on your income. So whatever is you are capable, manage it along that line. And then as you move up the income bracket, then adjust accordingly.
Always a pleasure to speak with you. Thank you so much, Dr. Alvin Ang, Ateneo's Head of Economics, for sharing your insights on how one might weather the challenging environment. Thank you so much. We appreciate you.
Thank you.
And before we go, we'll leave you with this quote from journalist Charles Jaff. It's not your salary that makes you rich, it's your spending habits. And that's it for today's edition of Follow the Money. I'm Raine Musñgi. Thank you so much for watching. Keep it here on BNC, the Bilyonaryo News channel, always on top.